It sounds like you almost had like two different cultures, you know, it's
Totally.
like this like free open internet side, help the developers, then it's like, all right, your hardcore SaaS sales enterprise folks is very, very different.
Totally.
Like, how did you bring people over from that kind of open source community to the paid side? Like maybe we'll start at the top of the funnel. Like what did kind of outreach look like and how did you kind of get those initial at bats with kind of folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this was a big learning, the biggest thing, the basis of like what was successful from a growth demand gen pipeline generation standpoint was basically saying finding people who were using Kafka, the underlying open source, and then pitching to them, here's how that can be improved, made easier, made cheaper by working with Confluent. Where we misstepped um, pretty meaningfully is, you know, data streaming, real time data, like that market is infinite, right? You could be like, oh my God, like our total addressable market is enormous. Let's find all those people who could benefit from real time data and like let's sell Confluent to them. And what we realized fairly quickly was if someone's not already using the open source software, like our conversion rates essentially are zero. And so we're spending all these resources trying to convince people that like this like new way of looking at data was like, the best thing for their business. Come to Confluent, we'll like take you on this journey with us. And what we realized was like that's too much of a jump. Like what we really needed was kind of a two-prong approach. One is like this great developer advocacy group that's like super developer focused, just focused on Kafka adoption and like in the purest, most like developer friendly way. And then kind of the like marketing and sales team's job was like, okay, once we have this like addressable market of Kafka users, then let's show them, the value of going from using Kafka to like working with Confluent as well. And it took us a while to figure that out. And it took us a while to kind of like, I think, we there was no desire to bring the developer advocacy group more to be more commercialization focused, but at least bring the sales team and the marketing team a little bit more to like appreciating that like the foundation of everything we do has to be usage of Kafka, the open source.
Yeah, it's super interesting and a good lesson around like how a niche, works, right? Like, you're trying to spread the word around, the big idea that Confluent was trying to solve, but it actually worked better when you were just focusing on just the people who are using Kafka and then moving them over. And you mentioned like that two-prong approach. Did you focus on both of them or you were more just on the marketing and sales side and trying to bring the Kafka users over to kind of the commercialized side?
Yeah, more so on the commercialization side. So one thing I think, Jay, our CEO, did really well is he kind of like siloed the developer advocacy group and like let them do their thing and not be kind of poisoned, frankly,
Yeah.
by the sales and marketing team. And so, we were just kind of there, like waiting for the Kafka community to expand and then seeing how we could action that. I think that was a really good decision and kept it pretty pure. So yeah, I was just on the greedy monetization side.
Makes sense. Makes sense. That's the side I would be on too.
Yeah.
And then what does it actually look like to kind of bring people over and like sift through the community? Are you just looking through like GitHub and seeing who's really active in open source and who's contributing to the project and things like that? Or yeah, how did that sort of go to market motion work?
Yeah, essentially like the biggest successes we had were okay, what are scalable? So obviously not like clicking around, a community, but what are scalable ways to identify what we called Kafka signal? Like how do we find what are the ways that we can identify that a company, a persona is using Kafka and then market to them, usually more so technical personas. How do we market to them like, hey, here's how your life or your job or your outcomes can be better by using Confluent? And so examples of that, we use like LinkedIn skills a lot because people would talk about Kafka as a skill they had. We used job postings, scraping job postings to identify if they were using Kafka at an organization. And then through a number of channels, ads, SEM, sales outreach, etc., we would target them. But again, another kind of mistake we made is getting a little too, in my opinion, this was not everyone's belief at Confluent, but we got a little cute and kind of, trying to go after these more senior business like personas, like, oh, we're going to, really pitch them like the dream of how digital transformation will change everything. I always found that like really getting it like, hey, a slightly more senior technical persona was like, and the conversion rates, agreed, was kind of the way in to starting kind of a deal cycle and getting pipeline generated. But yeah, I was not everyone agreed with me.